All right, welcome everybody to our talk on YouTube API uploads. My name is Kuan. I'm the product manager for the YouTube developer platform. And together with Jeff on our developer relations team and Gareth on our engineering team, we're going to spend the next 45 minutes or so going over all the different ways that you can use our APIs to upload videos to YouTube. So before we move on any further, this is the Wave link, and you want to open that up in your browser, take notes, post questions, and we'll get to as many of them as possible at the end of the session. All right, so a quick show of hands. How many of you guys, I'm sorry. Or you can go to the main I/O page for Wave, and it's got links to all the different waves that have been set up for the talks. All right, cool. So quick show of hands. How many of you guys have ever uploaded a video to YouTube? Oh, wow. That's kind of more than expected. And how many of you guys have done so using the API? Well, very impressive. Well, regardless of your kind of familiarity level with the YouTube API, we hope that this session will be useful to you because we're going to go through a lot of the common upload flows. For example, uploading from a website, a web app, uploading from a client app. We're also going to talk about a new Resumable upload API, which will let you upload huge multi-gigabyte files in a reliable way, potentially over a flaky internet connection. So a mobile connection would be a good example, and we'll show how to do that. We'll also talk about best practices for uploading metadata that goes with your video at upload time, bearing in mind that in some situations, the best practice is to not give us any metadata at all. And we'll talk about the different ways in which you can do that. We'll also cover writing upload apps for both Android and the iPhone. And we'll wrap up by doing a little discussion on our flagship open source video moderation and hosting platform that we built entirely on top of the YouTube APIs, and it runs on Google App Engine, and we call that YouTube Direct. All right, so why are we having this talk in the first place? Basically, we want your content. So if you're building any sort of app, any sort of service that deals with videos, we'd like you to think of YouTube as kind of your general purpose video hosting platform in the cloud. Our APIs have been around for many years now. They're stable, and we continue to improve upon them. You may have heard the stat that some 24 hours of videos are uploaded to YouTube every minute. Well, the API accounts for over 3 of those hours, so that's a lot of video content that's flowing through the APIs. If there's one thing you're going to hear over and over again during this presentation, is that you should always let your users upload their videos to their own YouTube account. YouTube is really not set up for the use case where you create this mega account and have all your users dump content to that one account. If you do that, your app will never be able to scale. There's a limit on how many videos can go into any single one YouTube account. And also, you might want to have to think about the different product and legal issues that could come up because you're kind of asserting ownership over everything that gets uploaded to your YouTube account. And in many cases, that's not really what you want to do. So always let users upload videos to their account. We support OAuth. There's really no excuse for you to not do so. Some other reminders for anybody who's using our APIs. If you're going to be sending us requests, it's just polite to identify yourself in every request. Right now, we require a developer key only when you're doing a write operation. But as a best practice, we recommend sending us a developer key with every request. Videos uploaded to YouTube can only be up to 10 minutes long. But if you are developing a service for one of our official content partners, this limit may not apply to you. Always give us your videos in the highest possible quality, the original source format. Right now on YouTube, we're encoding all of our videos up to 1080p. But in the future, should we decide to offer a higher resolution format, we do actually go back to our video catalog and reprocess all those videos. So if you want to future-proof your videos on YouTube, if you want your videos to look great on that Google TV device we announced this morning, you want to make sure that you're giving us the highest quality possible content. And finally, just note that as with all the API requests, upload requests are rate limited. And this may come up if you are trying to do a bulk migration of a whole bunch of videos into YouTube. And a simple strategy that we recommend for doing so is to upload as fast as you can. And if you get a quota error, simply just back off, do nothing for 10 minutes, and then resume. And it's a really easy way to kind of manage your usage quotas. All right, so Jeff will now tell you guys more about how to upload from a web app.
Cool. Thanks very much, Kuan. So the first form of YouTube API uploads we're going to talk about is browser-based uploads. And browser-based uploads are perfect for the scenario in which you have a web application and you want to allow users to upload video to YouTube from within the context of that web application. Browser-based uploads and all the other stuff we're going to talk about are documented fully in the YouTube API section of code.google.com. So all the nitty-gritty details are there, but I'm going to give you kind of a high-level overview of how that's done. So browser-based uploads work in a two-step process. The first step involves a post to a specific well-defined URL. That post will normally include all the metadata about the video. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of the incomplete metadata or no metadata scenario, but any of those cases, you're going to have to do an initial post. What you get back from that post is a unique, pretty much a security token, and a URL that you will end up using to do the actual upload of the video data. And this could be potentially a very large video file. It's worth noting that in this scenario, the user selects a file locally from their hard drive, and they upload directly to YouTube servers. So, user might be uploading 500 megabytes, but you don't actually have to store that 500 megabytes somewhere locally temporarily on your servers. It's just going directly to YouTube. So it scales pretty well in that case. And the way the actual file upload is done is really pretty much a simple HTML form post. The form contains an action element, and that action the action attribute, and that'll be the URL that you get back from the first step. That's a unique URL. And it'll have a file element in which the person will have selected the local file. It'll have a token, which is just another, in addition to the unique URL, it's just another way that we make sure that you're actually uploading on behalf of the user that you say you are. So I'm going to show you an example of that in a little bit. I just want to mention and reinforce something that you're going to hear a lot, which is there's really no excuse in this case not to use either auth sub or OAuth. Auth sub and OAuth are very similar in their purpose, and basically what it'll let you do is obtain credentials to upload videos or to take any action on behalf of a given user. And it'll allow you to do that without actually having to request that user's login name or password. Obviously, nobody out here and nobody watching this would write malicious applications and do anything nasty with people's usernames and passwords. But we really feel better if the username and passwords get entered on web pages that are hosted by Google. And what you'll actually do is get back a token that you could use pretty much indefinitely to make requests on that user's behalf. And I'll walk you through that process right now, actually. So I have a couple of examples. Well, one example that has both the source code and a live demo that I'm going to pull up. In this particular case, it's doing browser-based uploads from the context of an ActionScript 3 Flash application, which is kind of cool, and it actually makes use of ActionScript 3's support for auth sub, which we just recently, about 6 months ago, announced. So it might be something that you haven't seen before. It's certainly something that seems to be a common enough scenario. We work with a lot of advertisers who write stuff in ActionScript and might want to solicit uploads to YouTube. And this is kind of good reference code for that. But it also is just a good general purpose explanation of how to do browser-based uploads. So I'm going to pull up that example. Things are a little small on the screen, so pardon that. But cool things I want to show you, at least, are the auth sub user flow. So that gets initiated by clicking on the login button. I happen to already be signed in to my YouTube/Google account at this point, right over here. But if I weren't, it would ask me to initially enter my username and password. Because I'm already signed in, it takes me directly to the second step in the auth subprocess, which is authorizing access to the target web page for my account. In this particular case, I haven't registered ahead of time for this particular Shockwave file, and that means you'll see a little bit of a scary warning message, but we'll talk a little bit later, and I'll show you an example a little bit later about registering and the type of message that you'll see in that scenario. But in any case, I do trust this application, so I'm going to click Allow Access. And a redirection is done back to the Flash content that we have. And if you can see up here, it says I'm logged in now with my account. So I click Upload at this point. Very simple example. I choose just a movie file that I prepared for the purpose, and should hopefully happen very quickly. File uploaded successfully. If it were a much larger file, you would actually be able to see a status message printed out every X number of bytes. I'm not exactly sure how it's calculated, but because we're using the Flash plugin basically to do the upload on our behalf, the Flash plugin exposes nice events whenever X% of the upload has completed. So you actually can provide some feedback to your users as to how far along the upload process you are. So that was what your users might see. And it was a very, very simple example. Didn't actually ask for any metadata. We had some hard-coded metadata in this case. But I'm just going to walk you through some of the relevant portions of that code to illustrate the different processes. So this is actually the first step that we talked about. This gets triggered after you select the file. And it is responsible for sending the initial metadata to the browser-based uploads endpoint, and it's going to get back a response that has a token. We'll get to that in a second. So I'm just hard-coding some metadata in this case. Obviously, you could just as easily have written something in your Flash file or in an HTML form that captured video title, so on and so forth, or you could have used incomplete metadata. I'm setting a developer tag, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and doing a post request to this endpoint. So when the post is complete, this will be fired off. What I'm doing here is just really not even using XML parsing, just using regular expressions to strip out those two elements from the post response that I care about, namely the URL to use as the next step where you upload the file, and the unique token to also include in that request. So I'm getting both of those values, and then I'm calling the upload file function. And what upload file over here is doing is just adding in what amounts to, this is kind of just faking what a form submission would look like. So this is, could be, you think about it, this is the same sort of data that would be sent if you were doing a traditional browser-based form submission. So it's adding in an extra parameter, and that contains the upload token. And it's using that upload URL that it previously got from the first post response as the target for the second file upload stage. So this is actually, create a file reference, and you call upload on it, and that actually accomplishes the upload from the context of ActionScript. The complete sample is available as just open source sample code. The links to it are in the slide. So definitely check that out if you're doing any sort of Flash development, or if you just want to see an example of browser-based uploads. So I'll actually hand things over to Gareth now.
Thanks, Jeff. OK, so Jeff has given you some insight into how you would perform uploads from a browser-based application. And I'm going to tell you about the two upload mechanisms we offer for installed applications primarily. The first one is what we call direct upload. I'm going to be skimming over this one pretty quickly because it's largely been superseded by the second mechanism, Resumable. So this is for installed applications, although you can also use it for server-side apps, where you have access to the video file. The direct upload, while on the surface may seem to be the simplest upload mechanism, it's a single post. It uses the multipart related format, which is one of the more obscure content types, and it's very picky about how it's formatted. So it's quite easy to incorrectly format these multipart related messages, which is one of the reasons why Resumable is better. And again, you hear us say this time and time again, don't let users solicit uploads into your own account. Always let them use one of the authentication mechanisms. The temptation for installed application is to use client login, but we really discourage it in favor of either auth_sub or OAuth, because it means you don't have to handle the user's credentials, and then there's no security issues around that. Obviously, OAuth and auth_sub do need a browser, but let's face it, you can get browser-enabled fridges these days, so it shouldn't be too hard to do a quick redirect to get an auth_sub or OAuth token. Okay, so I'm going to spend a little more time talking about resumable uploads, especially since not so many of you have done an upload with the API. If you're going to get started, this is probably the mechanism you should use. In terms of use case, it's identical to direct uploads. You're going to use it primarily for installed applications. But it's a bit more like the browser upload that Jeff showed you. It's a two-stage process whereby you make an initial post, you're going to get back a unique URL for your upload, and you're going to use that unique URL to either provide the file contents or query for the status of the upload. Wherever there's client library support available, use Resumable. I think at the moment that means .NET and Java, but we should be rolling it out for other client libraries in the future. Even where client library support isn't available, you may want to consider using Resumable anyway. As you no doubt noticed from our keynote yesterday, even the best networks can let you down sometimes. And whether it's uploading your super high def version of Rick Astley and having somebody trip over your network cable, or trying to upload your latest cute cat video from your phone, a failed upload is a really bad user experience. And Resumable gives you a way of avoiding that and allowing the upload to continue under those conditions. So it's really perfect for any mobile devices or anything where you may not have a fully dependable network connection, and obviously, the bigger the video, the greater the payoff from Resumable if something goes wrong. So there is a small sample script just giving you a rough idea of how to do Resumable uploads on the Google Code site. But what I'm actually going to do today is kind of walk you through the protocol, just to give you a feel for how simple it actually is to do this upload. If any of you are familiar with Google Gears and its Resumable HTTP protocol, then this will be very familiar to you. So the opening shot in any Resumable upload is a single post request to the URL here. So this is uploading to a user who doesn't exist, me no exist. And the important points to know here, that the URL starts with Resumable. That's what indicates it's a Resumable upload rather than a direct upload. And the content type is nice and simple. It's not a multipart. You don't have to format a complicated body. It's just the straight Atom XML for the video entry. So in the body of the request, you would put the XML entry containing the title and the description and so on and so forth. The response, assuming your original request is good, so we do perform validation on the original request. So if there's something wrong with the Atom, or if your developer key is invalid, you'll get an immediate rejection. So you don't have to waste time uploading the file only to find out something is wrong. But hopefully you've got it all right, and you'll get a 200. And the important part here is this location header. And the location header will have this really long string at the end of it, a really long URL, which I've truncated here just to fit it all on a slide. And this is your unique URL for your upload. So this is where you're going to send the file and also where you can get information on the progress of the upload. So the next step is to actually send the file content. So here I'm just going to try and send an entire file in one go. So I use the URL I got from the previous step. And again, we've got a nice simple content type, either a video type or just octet stream. And I just provide the video file in the body. So again, no need to format any multipart messages. Assuming everything goes great, you will get 201 created response, and that's it. Your video is live in YouTube. Now, obviously, things don't always work out great. So if you get either a timeout on your connection, or if you get a 500 response of some sort, you can try and resume the upload. And the way you do that is by sending a very particular request. So you'll notice it's the same URL as I was using before when I was sending the file content, but this time it's totally empty. And I add this special header, content range, and the // means I'm querying for the status of the upload. Now, if the upload had completed successfully, then what I would get in response to this would be the same created. So if it was just the case that you didn't get the response, then making the query would give you back the completed response. But in the event that the upload wasn't complete, then you'll get this new response code, a 308. And that tells you that the server has some of the file, but not all of it. And the range header is the interesting part, and it tells you how many bytes the server received thus far. Then you can continue by sending the file content again. And this time we add in a content range header to tell the server what part of the file I'm actually uploading. You have to continue from the byte immediately after the one that the server has. You can't send overlapping blocks. In my earlier example, I tried to just upload the whole file in one go. But you can also use the content range header from the very start and upload your file in chunks. If it's easier for you for the file handling, then you can just upload it in, say, 10 megabyte chunks by using the content range header from the very beginning. And then, assuming this request goes through OK, then I'll get, again, the 201 created. If there's another problem, then I can try and resume again. And basically, from the moment you start a resumable upload, you've got roughly a day to complete it. So you've got plenty of opportunity to pick up, even in the worst of network conditions. So that's a quick look into the resumable. And now I'm going to give you a couple of tips and tricks for handling metadata for uploaded videos. So in the past, we had fairly strict requirements on the set of metadata you had to provide us along with the video. So you had to give us a title, you had to give us a description, and you had to give us some categories. There's now a way that you can bypass those requirements. So for a mobile device where you may not want to force the user to enter these details, or just to make a nicer upload experience so that the video gets live while the video gets uploaded while the user is still typing in the title and description so that he can get his cute kitten video on the web quicker. So you can specify this YT incomplete tag. And this tells YouTube that the metadata on this video is not going to be complete, and it should be regarded as a draft. What that means is your video won't show up in searches until you've gone into the website and updated the metadata or updated it through the API. But the video itself will still be uploaded and it will be accessible. So yeah, this is really ideal for situations where typing in the metadata would be painful for the user. And another good reason for Resumable is you even have the option to send us absolutely nothing. So you can just send a totally empty body and we'll take it and treat it as incomplete. So to give you an example, this is essentially the simplest video entry you can now generate. So you can see that it just has the basic boilerplate for an Atom XML entry, and then there's just this YT incomplete tag which lives inside the app control, and that's it. That's all you would have to provide. But you could provide more if you wanted. If you wanted to give a title at this point, you could certainly do that. And similarly, this is the simplest resumable request. So you don't provide any body at all. An important point here is you don't provide a content type. If you specify a content type, it will fail to parse. And on uploads in the past, we've required a header called the slug header. And traditionally, this is where you put the file name of the file you're uploading. In the case where you give us incomplete metadata, we're going to use that header to generate a standard title just as a placeholder. So if you are using this, it's worth putting something meaningful into the slug header, maybe the timestamp of when it was uploaded, or maybe the device it came from. Okay. You've heard us mention a few times now that it's not a good idea to solicit user uploads into your own account. And it's not just because we needed to pad out the talk, it's actually a really important point. And it's a continual source of problems for partners who start using the API. The most common use case for why people do this is they want people to upload videos using their tool, and then they want to be able to retrieve all the videos uploaded with their tool in one go. Now, there's an often overlooked feature called developer tags, which gives you exactly this functionality without the need to have users uploading into your account. So a developer tag is a tag you specify at upload time that's bound to a particular developer key. So the tag is only visible if you're using that developer key. So on upload, you specify it with a media category, as shown there, and you just give it whatever name you like. The name of your application, the name of your favorite pet, whatever. And then when you're fetching videos from the API, you can specify the developer tag again using the format shown at the bottom. So this dash followed by the schema, and then your tag name. And as long as you use the same developer key in both cases, you'll get back only the videos that have your developer tag, so only the videos that were uploaded using your application. And this is a much nicer way to still have all the videos accessible without hitting upload limits and things like that. Okay, so I'll now hand you back over to Jeff for some discussion of mobile uploads.
Sure. Thanks very much, Gareth. So we're going to start talking about mobile uploads by discussing the Android OS case. So let me say here that when I'm describing this initial scenario, I'm talking about Android phones that I guess are called Google Experience phones and have the YouTube app built in. So in that scenario, what we recommend, and this is a pretty straightforward approach, is to use the action send intent. Talked about intents a little bit at the keynote this morning, but for those who aren't familiar with them, they're basically ways of telling the Android operating system that you would like to do something optionally with some piece of data. So in this case, we're going to be using action send intent, which, as the name kind of implies, tells the Android operating system, hey, I'd like to send some data somewhere. And the data in this case is going to be a local movie file of some sort. It's not very many lines of code that you need to actually accomplish that sort of thing. The in this particular case, I'm assuming that there's a movie file stored in your SD card called test.move. But in this, this is just obviously an example. Probably what you would be doing would be capturing video directly from the video camera built in on whatever Android device you're using, saving it somewhere locally, and pointing at that particular movie file when calling the action send intent. And I'll go in a little bit and show you what that actually looks like. But before I do, I just want to note that the video will be uploaded into whatever YouTube account is associated with your Android phone, which 99% of the time is probably what you want to do. And if you do need a little bit, I also want to mention the current action send intent isn't so much an API as it is kind of like a fire and forget type of thing that doesn't give you any notifications once the actual upload is complete. So there's not much information you can get back from it. And I've been speaking to the Google engineers working on the YouTube app, and they wanted me to let you guys know that at some point in the near future, we should see some enhancements here, and you will actually be able to get back some metadata about the uploaded video once the action send intent completes. That being said, you might want a little bit more control than what the action send intent offers, and in that scenario, it's perfectly fine to just use either one of the kind of built-in HTTP libraries that Android devices offer, or you could actually use the newest version of the Google Data Java client library. I think anything that's in the 2.0 release branch now works on Android phones. So that's another choice if you don't want to go through the intent-based approach. And just to show you what the intent looks like, this is basically what the user would see if you execute the code on the previous page. And they'd have a bunch of different choices as to how they wanted to share a particular video file. One of them is going to be YouTube. So they'd select YouTube, video would kind of upload in the background, and the user would get notified when the upload is complete, but your code right now wouldn't. So that's the Android story, but we also have iPhone.
Thanks, Jeff. So how many of you guys write iPhone apps? You can be honest. We know this is a Google event, and certain things were said at the keynote this morning, but we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. So, well, if you haven't already dealt with the iPhone SDK, then the next couple of slides may not make all that much sense to you, but hopefully they'll at least show you that it's not that hard to get started. But the bad news is there is no equivalent of the action send intent on the iPhone. So if you want to upload a video to YouTube in an iPhone app, you will have to code against our APIs directly. And it's not that hard to do. So the typical life cycle of a video on the iPhone is with the UI image picker controller. You create an instance of that, you present that as a modal view controller, and it takes care of the entire process of activating the camera on the phone, giving the user a chance to capture a short snippet of video, allowing the user to trim the ends of the video, and then what you get at the end of the process is a path to an MPEG-4 file that's stored somewhere in the iPhone file system. And what we recommend doing is once you get that path to the MPEG-4 file, copy that file to some place that your app owns. In most cases, that's going to be your app's documents directory. And the reason for that is while you're in the process of uploading that file, should your app crash, it's not guaranteed that that movie file is going to be there at that same place the next time the user launches your app. So you want to make sure that you move that file someplace that ensures that it will persist, upload a file, and once you're done uploading, delete that file. If you're relatively new to iPhone programming, one reminder here is that make sure your app deals with low memory situations properly. The UI image picker controller is pretty heavyweight. So when you activate it, when it's on screen, when your camera is activated, most likely the phone OS is going to tell your app to release all of the views, which means when control returns back to your app, all of your views are going to have to be reloaded from a NIT file or recreated programmatically. And when that happens, you just want to make sure that your views are consistent with the underlying application state. And it's just an easy mistake that novice iPhone programmers make. Just some sample code. It's going to be part of the deck, so I'm not going to go too much into this, but it just shows you just basic code for setting up the UI image picker controller, setting it up for recording just videos and not stills, presenting that controller, and just finding the path to your apps documents directory so that you can do a simple copy of the MPEG-4 file from the temporary location to your app's location. A few additional tips and tricks. So we do have an Objective-C client library, but it's pretty heavyweight. So if you want to use that, we don't really blame you. If you want to hand roll your own HTTP requests, one open source Objective-C HTTP request library that I like using is ASI HTTP request, and you can check it out at a link over there. Makes it really easy to do things like display a progress bar while the post is in progress. If you are going to be hand-rolling your own HTTP API calls, you will probably not want to deal with XML. You will want to check out our new compact JSON output format, which we call JSON-C. And there's tons of open source iPhone libraries for parsing JSON. So I highly recommend that you guys go down with that approach. So to see all this code in action, we have some sample code that's part of our YouTube Direct open source project. If you go to that link, there is a sample iPhone app that you can take a look. It currently uses the older single post direct upload method, but it should be pretty easy to convert that to one that uses the Resumable Upload API that Gareth just talked about. And one last tip, if you haven't already figured out how to play a YouTube video within an iPhone app, there's really a simple way to do so. All you have to do is create a UI web view within your app and just give it some HTML that is just the usual YouTube embed snippet. And what it does is enables a Safari plugin to convert the Flash embed into something that the user can actually interact with. And on the iPad, the experience is actually really nice because the video will play inline within your app. So the user doesn't have to leave your app to a different screen to watch a video and come back to it. The video will play as part of your app's UI. And the overall user experience is really nice. Recommend you guys check it out. All right, so back to Jeff to talk about YouTube Direct.
Thanks, Kuan. So YouTube Direct, some of you might be familiar with it, but probably most not. So let me just give you an overview of exactly what it is. YouTube Direct is basically, what it comes down to is an App Engine instance running some open source code that's built on top of the YouTube APIs. We're running it as a completely open source project. Kind of the model that we see people doing is downloading the code, creating their own App Engine instance, and deploying it. The reason why people might want to use YouTube Direct is that it makes it, we hope, easier to embed a upload interface on any arbitrary website and solicit YouTube videos. So it's using browser-based uploads under the hood that we already discussed. And one of the initial types of partners that we've reached out to have been news organizations, and we've been trying to promote citizen journalism and things along those lines, and that's absolutely great. But we wanted to make sure that people knew that that's not the only potential uses for YouTube Direct. Pretty much any website where you think it would be nice to have a way of soliciting content in response to certain calls to action that you might have on your page, or just general upload your video responses to so on and so forth. You could do that using YouTube Direct pretty easily. So there's two different components of YouTube Direct, one of which is kind of the end user facing iframe, and this is what kind of hosts the whole browser-based upload interface. There's also a back-end admin-only moderation panel that lets you keep track of all the videos that have been submitted and moderate those videos. And moderation refers to the ability to add the videos that you do choose to accept into a playlist that would live in your own account, or additionally update the metadata of those videos to potentially contain a link back to your website, some way of branding the fact that those videos were uploaded by your YouTube Direct instance. So that's all part of the open source project. So we have a demo. This is a little abstract to talk about. I just have an App Engine instance set up for this purpose over here. This happens to be running on App Engine itself, the YTD demo.appspot.com, but this actual page does not have to be on App Engine. This, think of that as something could potentially be on your own website. It's just this content over here, and what happened was that an iframe was dynamically inserted into the page. This is what is running, this is what has to run on App Engine. So in this case, click on Login to YouTube. Maybe remember from a little bit earlier where I was doing the Flash-based example. It's more or less doing the same sort of auth sub authorization step. In this case, I was registered ahead of time with this particular domain, so you get a nicer message saying registered, secure. And hopefully users will, at that point, click allow access. And you get redirected back to the page that you were on. Knows I'm logged in with my account at this point. And there are two different options. You can either submit an existing video, and I'll show you that briefly. It uses the YouTube API to load in the most recent videos that were uploaded into your account. And that's not really what I want to demo, though. I'd like to show you just the upload and new video flow, because this is what's actually using the browser-based uploads rather than just calling a video that's already live in the account. So Google I/O. We're obviously not doing YTM complete here. We're actually collecting some metadata. The rest of the form is kind of optional, and because this is an open source project, you have full access to the code. You could adjust the types of information that you'd like to collect. Certainly, for this purpose, I'm not going to put in my phone number or anything like that. App Engine does have the ability to send out emails, so if I wanted, I could fill in an email address here. I would get notified when the moderator of this YouTube Direct instance decides to either accept or reject the video. But in this case, I'm just going to choose a file. I'm going to choose the same file from before. And click Upload. So what's worth noting is that as I'm uploading this video, it's going live into my own account, my Jeff Posnick test account. So regardless of whether anybody moderates the video and approves it or not, this video is live on YouTube. The moderation step only affects whether the master account for the YouTube Direct instance will include that video in a playlist or include some text linking back to this particular page. So I will show you the admin interface briefly, but I'm running a little bit low on time, so I won't spend too much time on that. Sign in again. This is basically something I threw together with all the different uploads in a list over here. You click on details. It pulls in the video details from a combination of some stored locally in the data store from App Engine, but it also will sync anything that's been updated using the YouTube API and pull that down. We'll let you preview the video. New feature that we added was the ability to edit the captions for the video. So we're kind of seeing some potentially cool uses for that with some organizations that want to allow people to upload videos, and then they'll do captions and update the captions that are live on that YouTube instance. So that's a pretty cool use case. And at this point, you could kind of choose whether to approve or reject the video, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to go back to the slides. We went through all this, and just brief kind of high picture overview of how we built YouTube Direct. At the center, an appropriate cloud is App Engine. So this is written using actually the Java version of App Engine, a bunch of JSPs and servlets. We're making use of App Engine data store for keeping track of a whole bunch of things, including the auth subtoken, session information, video metadata, things like that. We talk to the YouTube API, obviously, to sync metadata and to do the actual browser-based uploads. We're talking to Google accounts for getting the YouTube credentials for the given user. And we're talking to the host website. So the host website loads in some JavaScript. When you click on whatever button triggers the upload process, it basically dynamically inserts the iframe into the site. And there's the ability, in the min panel, which we didn't spend too much time talking about, to have configure different options for your YouTube API settings and to moderate videos as they come in. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover about YouTube Direct. We're going to take some questions at this point, and I'm going to pull up the link for the Google Wave again that has a moderator instance. Definitely, in addition to the questions that come from moderator, feel free to come up to the mic and ask any questions locally, too. And let me pull this up. Reload. OK, so yeah, if you guys want to come up too while we handle the questions. I'll take it first from the audience.
You guys keep on talking about, you really want to have the users themselves upload the videos to their own account,
Yep.
Which I understand. It makes sense. However, as far as a user experience, you have a lot of older people that don't have YouTube accounts. When I accept videos from them, it just doesn't seem to make sense as far as being able to get videos from a wide range of audience. And so we're trying to figure out for our organization, we're trying to figure out how exactly to make that work properly. And especially since I've used YouTube Direct a little bit, and doing the iframe and all of that is kind of clunky. It's just, you have to go back and forth between the websites. It just makes it a very difficult process. And we're trying to figure out, what's the best way of doing that? Is it better to use direct login through our website, or,
I'll take some of that, and other people can jump in. So I guess, first of all, we might have slightly different opinions in that we think people creating YouTube accounts and having YouTube accounts is pretty great. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it might be an extra step for a user to have to authorize the application. It is a one-time step. Once you do the auth sub login, you can reuse that token, and you'll have access to that account pretty much indefinitely in case you think that your user is going to be interacting with your website on a daily basis. So that gets around things a little bit. That being said, yeah, it is easier to do the approach where you upload all your videos into one account, and we do see a lot of people who end up doing that. As somebody who has to deal with the aftermath of people who decide that they're going to go live with that sort of approach and don't realize what our limitations are, I could tell you that it's just really not how we have things set up. I don't want to get into any potential legal issues or anything like that, but it's also problematic from that point of view, beyond whatever restrictions we have on the size of videos in the account. So I don't have an answer for you in terms of saying, this is a magical other approach you could take. It's a sort of thing where you really do need to, and I think users across the web need to get used to having this sort of interstitial page where you log in on a trusted site and you grant access to other things. And I think across the Google APIs, you'll see that same model. So.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. Take another from the audience.
A lot of people are using YouTube for search engine optimization and trying to drive traffic, and they're labeling videos with things that don't relate to what the video is about. And I'm wondering if you're planning on using voice recognition so that you have an idea of what the video is about, other than just what people are calling it.
Did you mean the tags that?
The tags, yes. The tags don't always match what the video is about. But Google has this great voice recognition thing.
Right, we haven't really spoken a lot about this publicly, but we do have automated classification systems that are going on. Like, for example, when you go to youtube.com and you start browsing videos by categories, we don't just go by the categories that the user tells us. We actually classify some of the videos through algorithmic means. So we have some of this information. I'll take what you've just said back to the team. It's something we could potentially look at, maybe exposing some of the tags that came out of the automatic video classification process. Right now, these are not exposed, but we could potentially expose them in the future.
I'm just going to switch to the moderator real quick and make sure we get a couple of questions from there. Will there be an HTML5 version of the Chromeless player at some point? I assume also the Chromeless player refers to both the player that doesn't have all the Chrome and also just the standard embedded player that you see pretty much across the web. I made sure to talk to the players team about this before I came because I had a feeling that there'd be a question about this. The answer is yes, that there will be a way of embedding HTML5 player video into your web pages, much like you do right now with the Flash player. It's not something that we're really ready to commit to a specific implementation right now. It really just not very far along in deciding how it's going to be done. It probably will be an iframe of some sort and a JavaScript object that ends up being loaded in and exposed the same sort of API that we have right now. I think hopefully we'll match the existing API, so you shouldn't have to rewrite too much of your custom player control logic and things like that. But under the hood, it's going to be completely different, obviously. So stay tuned, pretty much. We should have something to talk about. Take another from the audience.
Okay, sorry, I have a lot of questions here. I'll try to be brief. First, our institution is trying to use this almost as a workflow system. We have people from our media department who are sending stuff up to PR, and it is uploaded to an institutional account, and they're trying to send it up to another department on the university to approve it before it goes live on the web. So that might be an interesting use case study for having functional accounts, multiple accounts, not only a user account. Secondly, for the gentleman that was just before me, are you guys using any of the automated generated captions in search data? And can you speak to the captions?
Yes, we do use auto-generated captions as part of the search ranking secret sauce, blah, blah, blah. We currently don't have a way to expose those automatically generated captions to the API right now. The reasons for that are mostly legal in nature, so I can't really go too much into this stuff. So I hope that answers your question about captions, sort of.
Okay, I'll try to get through as many other ones as we can. If I have a video hosted on my own server, is the way to get the video from a given URL rather than from a local file. So I guess that's during the upload stage. No, that's not something you can do. I guess I would basically have our servers fetch the video file from a well-defined URL instead of including it in the request. But no, I don't know if that's something we're even thinking about doing necessarily.
Yeah, not something I've heard of anyone thinking about doing.
Sorry about that. And let's see, we use the API to auto-generate captions, fetch a copy of those generated captions, clean up locally using heuristics, and upload a clean captions file.
Right, so we kind of answered that. So the auto-generated captions are not available through the API, unfortunately.
But you can upload your own captions using the API.
If you're the owner of that video.
Let's see, can you add meta tags for SEO? So I guess this would be additional tags that were just visible by search engines, perhaps?
I don't think so, because that's you're talking about a standard YouTube watch page, and that's not something that third parties have control over.
Mm-hmm. With the resumable uploads, when we're slicing a large file into smaller pieces, is it possible to upload the pieces out of order simultaneously?
Yeah, the simple answer is unfortunately not yet. So at the moment, the rules for resumable uploads are very strict. You have to upload all the bytes in sequence, and you can't upload any overlapping chunks. But stay tuned. We're hoping to relax those requirements in the near future.
Right. And ending on a high note, will there ever be a way to download YouTube videos that does not violate the terms of service?
Well, the answer is simple. No. It's not because we're terrible people, but the license agreement that we have with anybody who uploads a video to YouTube, whether it's your mom or some huge studio, is that we'll use your videos only for streaming purposes. So any use cases that does not involve streaming cannot be supported through the API, so no downloads.
Yeah, I have a question. If I want to upload the video, I'd like to make I have new version of the same video, but I'd like to keep all the data of the old, because it's new version, it's not new video. Is there any way to keep, like, for example, in AdWords, we are advertising particular video, and now when we're making a new version, you need to replace all the ads, and it takes a lot of time to improve them. And
Yeah, I mean, there's no way for us to support that if you're just a regular user uploading to YouTube. We know we do have some super high tier content partners that require the ability to swap out a video. But we can't offer this generally because then you have a whole bunch of bait and switch videos where somebody gets a video really popular and just kind of keeps swapping videos into that same video ID. So it's something like that. It's going to be abused really, really easily. So that's just the reality of the situation.
Okay, I have a feeling we're pretty much out of time, but thank you, everybody.
No, thanks for being here.
Yeah. Yes.